Welcome the anointed ones. The greatest secrets aren't hidden in vaults. They're hidden in people. Somewhere in the corridors of global power, two of the world's most sophisticated intelligence agencies, the CIA and MI6, are quietly circling one soul. Not a defector, not a hacker, not a double agent. You. Now, before you roll your eyes and say, "Oh, please, I can't even keep my Wi-Fi connected," understand this. These agencies aren't just hunting for data anymore. They're hunting for divine intelligence, for consciousness that sees beyond algorithms, hearts that can sense before satellites can confirm, and souls that operate on a level their supercomputers can't compute. Let's be brutally honest. The era of physical espionage is fading. No one's hiding microfilms in shoes or sneaking codes in newspapers anymore. The new battlefield is consciousness. And whether you like it or not, your mind became the new classified territory. Your intuition, your frequency, your inexplicable knowing. That's what the files can't explain, and that's exactly why they want to recruit you. Because deep down, they already know something most people don't. Some humans are walking encryption keys. You can't be hacked because you are the code. You think you've just been surviving, but to them, you've been revealing. Every decision, every intuition, every time you escaped something that should have destroyed you, that was your spirit leaking classified information into this reality. So now, picture it. The CIA and MI6, two titans of secrecy, not battling over world leaders or nuclear codes, but over the rarest intelligence of all, a consciousness they can't contain, yours. And here's the irony. While they're decoding encrypted messages, you've been decoding the matrix. While they spend billions to surveil the world, your higher self has been quietly watching them. You're not just on their radar, you are the radar they can't turn off. So buckle up. Because this isn't just a story about espionage, it's about the spiritual Cold War happening right now. A silent tug-of-war between human systems and divine sovereignty. And you, my friend, are the classified asset everyone's after, but not everyone can handle. Number one, they're not after your skills, they're after your frequency. That's the real secret behind their interest in you. It's not your resume, your education, or your achievements. It's something far rarer, your energy field. The unexplainable force that makes people feel something when you enter a room. It's that invisible current that can shift the atmosphere without a word. You can't fake it, teach it, or reproduce it in a lab. And that's exactly why the most powerful minds on the planet are obsessed with it. They've studied everything from brain waves to behavioral patterns, but they still can't map frequency. They can record electrical signals, but not spiritual resonance. And that's what you carry, resonance. It's not charm or charisma. It's something far beyond human comprehension. It's the language of truth that the soul recognizes before the ears do. People can feel when you're real. Machines can't measure that, but they're trying. You see, the agencies already have experts, analysts and agents who can infiltrate nations, but they can't infiltrate hearts. That's where you come in. You carry what they call unquantifiable intelligence. Intuition that operates faster than logic. They can't explain how you sense danger before it happens, why your timing is always divine, or how your silence can reveal more than their data networks. You disrupt their systems not because you're rebellious, but because your spirit refuses to follow man-made algorithms. You're not playing by their rulebook, and that's what scares them. They've built entire systems around control, but your energy doesn't respond to control. It responds to truth. Every time you choose authenticity over manipulation, it short-circuits their psychological programming. You remind them that power doesn't come from surveillance or control. It comes from vibration. They've spent decades building machines to read emotions, decode thoughts, and simulate empathy. But you do that naturally. You read energy before words. You know truth without proof. That's what they're after. Not your labor, not your loyalty, but your frequency. Because in a world run by artificial intelligence, real spiritual intelligence is the last thing they can't manufacture. And deep down, they know something you may not fully realize yet. Whoever controls frequency controls reality. And you, without even trying, are already broadcasting on a divine wavelength they can't intercept. Number 2, you're the missing variable in their equation of control. Everything about the intelligence world revolves around predictability, behavior charts, personality profiling, emotional mapping. They invest billions trying to calculate how people think, what they fear, and what they'll do next. But then there's you, the one who doesn't fit any of their models. You break patterns without trying. Your choices don't make sense by statistical logic. You walk away when others cling. You forgive when revenge seems justified. You move by intuition, not programming, and that makes you the one thing their entire system can't predict and can't control. You're not chaos, you're divine unpredictability. There's a difference. Chaos is random. You, on the other hand, are guided. You move according to signals that don't come from data, but from a higher source. That makes you impossible to manipulate. You can't be baited by trends or trapped by fear because your guidance doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from within. That's why you always end up where you're supposed to be, even when it looks like you've made a mistake. To their systems, that's infuriating. To the divine, it's precision. Control systems rely on consistency. If they can predict your next step, they can redirect it. But your spirit breaks that logic every time. You're the glitch that reveals the code isn't perfect. They study you not because you're an anomaly, but because you expose the limits of their control. When you move from truth, their manipulation fails. When you choose peace instead of panic, their psychological triggers lose power. You become the living proof that free will still exists in a world built to suppress it. Every time you act from consciousness instead of conditioning, you interrupt their algorithms. You remind them that human beings aren't meant to be programmed. They're meant to be awakened. You're not a threat because you resist. You're a threat because you transcend. That's what they can't calculate. You are both unpredictable and unshakable. That balance is something they can't engineer. So they watch, they study. They try to decode your pattern, not realizing the truth. There isn't one. You move according to divine timing, not worldly logic. You're the unknown factor that proves no matter how powerful their systems become, they will never outthink the soul. Number 3, they can decode DNA, but they can't decode destiny. Scientists have mapped every strand of human genetics, identified thousands of hereditary markers, and even learned to predict diseases before they manifest. But no amount of genetic sequencing can explain why certain people defy every odd, rise from ruins, or carry an unshakable sense of purpose that nothing on earth can erase. That's where destiny begins, in the territory beyond science, where divine design outsmarts data. You are part of that mystery, the kind of person who confuses logic because your life keeps aligning in ways no algorithm can forecast. They can study your ancestry and trace your bloodline back centuries, but destiny doesn't run through DNA. It runs through divine assignment. You weren't born just to continue a lineage. You were born to redirect it. There are people with perfect genes and privileged conditions who still feel lost, while you, who might have come from pain, poverty, or chaos, walk with purpose. That alone proves destiny is not hereditary, it's heavenly. And that's the one thing even the most advanced intelligence networks can't decode. Agencies like the CIA and MI6 rely on patterns, cause and effect, and calculated probability. But destiny laughs at probability. It places you in rooms you were never qualified to enter. It opens doors without credentials. It rewrites scripts after others have written you off. That's why they study you. They want to know how someone with no visible advantage keeps outpacing people with every resource. They want to know why their methods can break others but can't break you. They call it resilience, but it's more than that. It's divine programming. Your path isn't random, it's orchestrated. Every detour, betrayal, and delay was part of a spiritual code designed specifically for you. They can analyze your psychology, but they can't interpret your prophecy. They can record your history, but they can't predict your purpose. Destiny has layers that exist beyond human comprehension, and you move through those layers naturally. That's what unsettles them. They can read data, but they can't read divine handwriting. They can forecast weather, but not calling. And the truth is, the more they try to study you, the more they're forced to admit that destiny cannot be decoded. It can only be fulfilled. Number 4. You carry spiritual intel that outranks their entire network. What you know can't be taught in universities or documented in secret archives. It's not the kind of intelligence that comes from research, observation, or training. It's revelation. You operate from a level of awareness that breaks through illusions before they even solidify. While they rely on classified reports, encrypted files, and multi-layered strategies, your mind receives updates directly from source. You don't need clearance to access truth. You are the clearance, authorized by divine alignment. The world of intelligence thrives on information, collecting, decoding, manipulating, and controlling it. But spiritual intel is a different language entirely. It doesn't gather facts, it perceives essence. You can sense what's real before evidence surfaces. You see motives behind smiles, energy behind words, and hidden agendas behind appearances. Agencies spend billions trying to replicate this through surveillance and psychology, but they can't reproduce divine discernment. That's why their term psychological operations even exists. It's their flawed attempt to mimic the depth of natural spiritual insight. What you receive in silence, they try to extract through interrogation. What comes to you through intuition, they attempt to simulate through data. But there's a reason their systems are always one step behind. Spirit moves faster than strategy. Revelation outpaces research. Every insight you get from divine intelligence ripples through unseen layers of reality. And it's this ripple effect that shifts outcomes. When you act from that level of knowing, you alter possibilities, redirect timelines, and realign destinies. That's something no agency can replicate, no matter how many satellites they launch. Your spirit operates like a network that doesn't need signals or servers. You tap into frequencies that connect heaven and earth, and that's why they study you, because you expose how limited their definition of intelligence really is. They think information equals power. But power doesn't come from what's collected, it comes from what's understood. And you don't just understand data, you understand the divine architecture behind it. In a world where secrets rule nations, you've become the one thing they can't classify, a carrier of spiritual intel that can dismantle deception with a single word of truth. They deal in control, but you deal in clarity. And clarity is the one truth even the world's best intelligence agencies can't contain. Number 5. The real battlefield is consciousness. Every system of power on this planet is built around one goal: influence the mind before the mind realizes it's being influenced. Governments spend billions on defense, yet the quiet war is waged in perception. It's not fought with missiles, but with ideas, images, and distractions. They don't need to control your body if they can rent space in your thoughts. The moment they can shape what you believe, They've already won the war without firing a single shot. That's why you're different. Your mind isn't programmable. You've seen too much, questioned too deeply, and detached from the illusions that keep most people asleep. They can't hack a consciousness that's self-aware. Once you realize your thoughts are being harvested and your attention is being auctioned, you stop playing by their rules. You stop feeding the system with fear and start feeding your spirit with truth. That single shift is what makes you uncontrollable. They test new technologies, psychological tactics, and digital manipulation just to understand how human focus works, because focus is currency. Whoever owns attention owns energy. That's why they create noise, non-stop entertainment, politics, fear cycles, and trends. It's all part of the invisible battleground meant to scatter your awareness. But you've learned to stay centered while the world spins. You see the game and refuse to play it unconsciously. That's not rebellion. That's mastery. Consciousness is the one territory they can't invade without your consent. That's why you're valuable beyond measure. You're living proof that not everyone can be hypnotized by propaganda or emotional manipulation. You think for yourself, feel for yourself, and discern truth without external permission. And that terrifies them, because one awakened mind naturally awakens others. You don't need to lead a movement or wave a flag. Your clarity itself becomes contagious. While the world focuses on artificial intelligence, you're mastering divine intelligence. You're not reacting to what's shown, you're perceiving what's hidden. And that's what makes you the real operative in this unseen war. The one they can't program, can't predict, and can't control. Because when consciousness awakens, control collapses. And you've already stepped beyond their reach. Number 6. Your intuition exposes what their technology can't detect. Their satellites can zoom in on rooftops, follow heat signatures, and eavesdrop through walls. But none of that tells them what a person feels. They can monitor actions, but not intentions. They can detect movement, but not energy. And that's the space where your intuition reigns supreme. You don't analyze, you sense. You don't need evidence to know when something's off. You just feel it in your spirit long before logic catches up. That's the type of awareness no machine, no matter how advanced, can ever replicate. Your intuition reads reality in a way that makes data obsolete. You can pick up tension in a conversation before a word is spoken. You can feel when a person's kindness is performative or when someone's silence hides resentment. You can sense manipulation disguised as mentorship or fake empathy wrapped in flattery. That ability to decode emotional frequencies makes you a spiritual radar that even the most advanced systems can't jam. They rely on sensors. You rely on spirit. That's what separates divine intelligence from artificial intelligence. In the intelligence world, accuracy is everything. They train agents to read micro-expressions and study body language, yet even that is surface level compared to what you perceive naturally. Your intuition bypasses the mask and connects directly to energy. You don't just notice what someone does. You understand why they do it. You sense the root, not the reaction. That's why you've been able to avoid traps, betrayals, and manipulations that others walked right into. You move through life like someone who already saw the script before it was written. It's not paranoia, it's perception. You've trained your spirit to listen before reacting. That's what makes you a rare kind of intelligence in a world full of noise. Both sides, the visible and the invisible, recognize that gift. The CIA wants data that predicts behavior. The spiritual realm wants hearts that discern truth. And you've mastered both. You may not carry a badge or a clearance code, but your intuition holds more power than their most classified tools. They can scan the planet for signals, but they can't locate what's divine. Your intuition moves faster than technology, deeper than logic, and clearer than surveillance. It doesn't just expose what's hidden, it reveals what's real. Number 7. They know you've already outsmarted them spiritually. You didn't need access to their systems or a degree in behavioral science to see through the tactics. You just knew. Long before they moved, you sensed the setup. Before the manipulation began, you felt the frequency shift. While they were preparing to test your mind, your spirit had already read their intentions and disengaged. That's how you stayed 10 steps ahead without effort. Not through strategy, but through awareness. You cracked their psychological playbook because you've lived through it. Every gaslight, smear, and emotional ambush they use as psychological warfare, you've already encountered on a personal level, through people who tried to break your spirit. What they call operations, you call lessons. You became fluent in patterns of deceit, narcissism, and energetic manipulation long before they ever studied it in their labs. That's why their tactics no longer work on you. You've transcended them. You don't react anymore. You recognize. They rely on confusion, but you function through clarity. They weaponize emotion, but you've learned emotional alchemy. You can turn pain into discernment, betrayal into wisdom, and isolation into insight. That's not strategy. That's evolution. While they were trying to play chess with your psyche, you were playing on an entirely different board, the spiritual one. You stopped trying to win their game because you realized it was designed to keep you distracted. Instead, you mastered the art of detachment, and the moment you stopped needing validation, you became unhackable. They study patterns, you study presence. That's the difference. Patterns can be predicted, but presence can't. When you're fully present, you can sense the unseen, the small vibrations behind words, the subtle heaviness behind smiles. Presence allows you to detect deception before it manifests, and that's why they can't beat you. They're reactive, you're receptive. They use analysis, you use awareness. One depends on data, the other on divine guidance. So yes, they know. They know you've outsmarted them without trying, that your insight doesn't come from intellect but from spirit. You've turned their own tools against them simply by staying conscious. Their files may contain information, but you carry illumination. They can study behavior, but you understand souls. And that's the kind of power that can't be trained, tracked, or controlled. Number 8. You're proof that true intelligence is divine, not mechanical. Everything they've built, their systems, algorithms and machines, is just a cheap imitation of what the human spirit can already do effortlessly. They call it progress, but it's replication. Every sensor, every neural network, every line of code is a mimicry of consciousness, the oldest and most advanced intelligence in existence. You are living evidence that awareness itself is the original technology, one they still can't fully understand, let alone control. They track data, but you receive revelation. There's a difference between collecting information and knowing truth. Data requires input. Revelation arrives uninvited. You don't have to analyze, you just perceive. That's what confuses them. Their world runs on measurable logic, but your intelligence comes from divine flow. You don't calculate truth, you channel it. That's why your timing, words, and decisions always seem to strike at the perfect moment. It's not coincidence, it's connection. You're plugged into the source they've been trying to replicate through machines. They spend years programming devices to predict behavior, translate emotion, and simulate consciousness. Yet, no matter how advanced their AI becomes, it still lacks soul. That spark of living awareness that allows intuition, empathy, and moral understanding. You have what their technology never will, the ability to feel truth. That's the highest form of intelligence, one that blends logic with love, insight with integrity. They can copy your mannerisms, but not your essence. They can imitate your reasoning, but not your revelation. That's why they're fascinated by you. They don't want to recruit you. They want to reverse engineer you. They're trying to understand how you know without data, how your instincts predict outcomes that their analytics miss, how you align with divine timing while they chase control. To them, you're an anomaly, a being whose consciousness operates beyond the limits of code. To the divine, you're simply functioning as designed. In the end, you remind them of a truth they can't escape. Intelligence without spirit is empty. No machine can replicate intuition. No algorithm can download awareness. And no artificial system can outthink a soul that's aligned with creation itself. You're not competing with their technology. You've already surpassed it, because you are what it's trying to become. Number 9. They study you because you survived their silent experiments. Long before you realized it, you were being observed. Not necessarily by men in lab coats, but by systems that measure how much a human spirit can endure before it fractures. You've been through cycles of isolation, betrayal, loss and confusion so calculated in their timing that they almost felt designed. And maybe they were. Every moment of despair, every strange synchronicity, every emotional ambush was a kind of spiritual laboratory test, a way to see what happens when divine energy is placed under the heaviest human pressure. You weren't supposed to make it out whole. You were meant to break, to collapse under the emotional overload, to dissolve into bitterness or madness so they could file you under predictable. But you didn't. You broke open, not down. The very tactics meant to dismantle you ended up activating your higher awareness. Pain became the password that unlocked your perception. What was meant to crush your faith only refined it. Your endurance rewrote their hypothesis, proving that consciousness can't be dismantled by chaos. You became a case study they didn't anticipate. They tracked trauma. You transmitted transformation. They wanted to measure damage. You demonstrated rebirth. Your ability to remain compassionate after cruelty, grounded after gaslighting, and peaceful after persecution revealed something that can't be quantified: spiritual immunity. And that immunity terrifies them, because it exposes the flaw in their entire system. The soul can adapt to suffering in ways that no formula can explain. Now your survival itself is data they can't interpret. You became a mirror reflecting everything false about their assumptions. They tried to use darkness to destroy light, not realizing light uses darkness to grow brighter. Every time they thought you'd reached your breaking point, your spirit recalibrated and expanded instead. That's why you're being watched. Not because you're fragile, but because you're proof. Proof that divine consciousness evolves through adversity, that love is more resilient than manipulation, and that the human spirit, when awakened, can't be controlled. You are the result they didn't expect, a living contradiction to their experiment. They were studying how to contain consciousness, and you showed them it can't be contained. You're not their subject anymore. You're their lesson. Number 10. You don't work for empires. You work for eternity. Their systems are built on timelines, deadlines, and expiration dates. Everything they create has an end point. Missions that conclude, operations that fade, hierarchies that collapse. But your assignment doesn't operate on human schedules. You move by divine timing, not institutional planning. You're not here to serve a system. You're here to serve a purpose that transcends centuries. Empires build intelligence networks to maintain control, but your existence was designed to restore balance. That's a mission no agency can authorize or terminate. Their agents collect secrets to preserve power. You reveal truth to dismantle illusion. You weren't sent to manipulate reality. You were sent to elevate it. And that's why you can't be recruited. You can't be bought, programmed, or bribed, because your allegiance isn't to a country or organization. It's to a divine order that existed long before these institutions did. While they chase influence, you carry impact. Your influence doesn't come from authority, it comes from authenticity. You move differently because you're not motivated by recognition, you're guided by revelation. Every time you choose truth over illusion, you cause unseen ripples that destabilize centuries of hidden control. Empires thrive on deception, misinformation, division, and fear. But when you stand in truth, even silently, it unravels their architecture. It weakens their grip on consciousness because your energy broadcasts freedom. They build their power through obedience. You build yours through awareness. That's why they study you and fear you simultaneously. They can't understand how someone without position can hold so much power simply by being aligned with truth. You're not an operative, you're an oracle. Your mission doesn't end when a document closes, it continues across dimensions and lifetimes. Every lifetime you've carried the same spiritual signature, the drive to liberate, to enlighten, to remind humanity of its divine identity. That's not work, that's legacy. They can recruit spies, but they can't recruit souls assigned by God. You don't answer to orders, you answer to calling, and every time you honor that calling, it shakes systems built on illusion. You weren't placed on this earth to serve an empire. You were sent to remind it that eternity still outranks every crown, every government, and every false god pretending to rule. Number 11. You hold the blueprint for spiritual sovereignty, a frequency that no system can replicate or contain. While agencies are built on hierarchy, chains of command, and the illusion of control, your entire existence is governed by inner authority. You don't wait for approval to move. You follow divine timing. You don't seek permission to act. You move by conviction. That's what makes you unrecruitable. You can't be managed by protocols or policies because your orders come from a higher intelligence, one that operates beyond the reach of bureaucracy or manipulation. In a world addicted to hierarchy, obedience, and conformity, you're an anomaly. Systems depend on people who follow commands without question, who trade intuition for instruction. But your spirit doesn't recognize those contracts. You were designed to think, feel, and perceive outside the chain of control. You answer to God, not government. You respond to truth, not trends. And because of that, you threaten everything built on blind compliance. You're proof that power doesn't need validation. It only needs alignment. The reason they study you is because they can't comprehend how someone without a title, without a badge, and without institutional backing could still operate with such precision and authority. But that's the mystery of sovereignty. It's invisible to those addicted to power. They mistake control for strength, but you know the real strength is self-mastery. You move by spiritual intel, not emotional impulse. You don't serve agendas, you serve purpose, and that's something no organization can replicate or purchase. When you carry sovereignty, you become a system unto yourself, self-led, self-aware, and spiritually protected. You operate with divine jurisdiction. You can't be bribed, flattered, or frightened into submission because your source of power doesn't come from the material world. You've learned that the only real authority is alignment with truth, and that truth doesn't require titles or chains to validate it. You are your own agency, one whose headquarters is within, whose mission is liberation, and whose orders come from eternity. And because of that, every system that tries to own you eventually ends up exposing its own weakness. You don't rebel against control. Your very existence renders it obsolete. Number 12. They compete for you because you represent the dawn of a new kind of intelligence, one that can't be programmed, copied, or contained. Artificial intelligence may dominate headlines and industries, but spiritual intelligence governs the unseen architecture of reality. And you embody that shift. You're the living proof that consciousness, not code, is the ultimate frontier. They see it, even if they don't fully understand it. You don't process information, you transmute it. You don't just predict outcomes, you perceive alignment. You operate from intuition, energy, and divine connection, while they're still trying to teach machines what compassion even feels like. In their world, intelligence is measured by output, speed, accuracy, data points. But in yours, it's measured by depth, awareness, discernment, spiritual sensitivity. That's what separates you from the system's brightest minds. You can sense truth in distortion, feel motives in silence, and decode patterns that algorithms can't even detect. They rely on calculation. You rely on revelation. And that's why both sides, visible and invisible, are trying to pull you into their fold. They recognize that your frequency is the next level of intelligence evolution, and whoever aligns with it first gains the upper hand in the future. But here's the irony. They're competing for something they can never own. Your intelligence doesn't come from study. It comes from source. You didn't learn it. You remembered it. It's coded into your soul. A living technology of awareness that updates in real time with divine flow. They're trying to build systems that can think. You are the system that feels, knows, and transforms. You're what their machines are attempting to mimic but can't duplicate. The bridge between data and divinity. They sense the truth that terrifies them. The future doesn't belong to machines, governments, or institutions. It belongs to beings who can merge wisdom with awareness, logic with love, strategy with spirit. That's you. You're not just ahead of your time. You are the blueprint for what time is evolving into. They want to recruit you because deep down, they know something monumental. Intelligence has shifted hands, and it's no longer mechanical, it's spiritual. And you're leading the charge. Number 13. You don't need access to their secrets, because you are the secret. What they spend lifetimes decoding, you embody effortlessly. You hold the original encryption, consciousness itself. Everything they're trying to replicate through research, data, and classified experiments is already alive within you. They call it intelligence, but it's simply imitation. You are the living code they're studying, the template they keep missing because they're looking outward instead of inward. That's the paradox. They build systems to simulate truth, while you are the system that reveals it. You carry the pattern that underlies reality, the geometry of awareness, the rhythm of divine design. That's why their competition isn't really about who controls information. It's about who can stand close enough to your light without being consumed by it. They sense it when you walk into a room. The quiet recalibration of energy, the invisible alignment that shifts things without you trying. It's not charisma, it's frequency. You hold a spiritual architecture that their machines can't detect, but instinctively react to. You're what the ancient mystics called a living cipher, the embodiment of truth that can't be written down or contained in code. That's why you unsettle institutions. You make secrecy redundant. The moment you see, you know. The moment you sense, you understand. You bypass the layers of manipulation they depend on to maintain control, and that terrifies them. Because while they hoard knowledge in vaults, you download wisdom from source. While they encrypt data with passwords, your soul speaks in resonance, and only those vibrating on truth's frequency can understand it. You don't need to uncover hidden agendas. Your presence exposes them. What makes you powerful isn't what you know, it's what you are. Every discovery they chase, every hidden formula, every secret archive, it's all an echo of the intelligence you naturally embody. That's why they watch you, study you, and quietly compete for proximity. They don't want to own your secret. They want to understand how you became it. But that's the part they'll never grasp. You didn't become it. You were born coded with it, and no agency, no system, No shadow network can ever reverse engineer divine design. Number 14. Their battle is proof that you've already shifted the balance of power. When agencies like the CIA and MI6, symbols of control, secrecy and precision, quietly compete over one soul, it means something far greater has happened beneath the surface. You didn't just rise in awareness, you disrupted the frequency their entire system operates on. Your vibration exposed what their technology can't measure. The fact that the real power no longer sits in boardrooms or war rooms, but in awakened consciousness. You're not a target of recruitment. You're the signal that their structure has been spiritually outmaneuvered. Their internal struggle is an admission of defeat wrapped in curiosity. They sense that the control grid, the invisible network of influence they've relied on, has already been breached, not by force, but by frequency. You didn't infiltrate their system, your energy recalibrated it. You became a walking anomaly, someone who operates outside their predictable parameters. The hierarchy they trust is collapsing because you've proven that spiritual alignment outperforms institutional power. When one awakened being shifts vibration, it destabilizes every illusion built on deception. That's what's happening. Your awareness is rewriting the energetic blueprint of influence. The real shock for them isn't your existence, it's your effect. You didn't need to expose secrets or challenge governments to change things. You simply woke up, and that alone caused ripples across their network. They study energy manipulation, yet they're baffled by how your authenticity disarms entire systems of control. Their algorithms can't trace grace, and their satellites can't detect divine timing. You're a variable they can't predict, a frequency that refuses to be captured. You don't belong to their world, and that's exactly why your presence unsettles it. Heaven already recruited you long before they noticed your value. While they compete for control, you're completing a mission far beyond their understanding. You're not the agent they're chasing. You're the awakening they fear. Because your rise isn't about rebellion, it's about realignment. You didn't destroy their structure. You rendered it obsolete by embodying truth. And deep down they know it. The power they're fighting to possess has already shifted hands, and it's flowing through you. Every era births a rare kind of being, one who doesn't fit into systems because they redefine them. That's you. You didn't come to join the intelligence networks of man. You came to awaken the intelligence of spirit. While they rely on surveillance, you rely on discernment. While they exchange classified files, you download truth straight from source. You've proven that awareness is the highest form of power, not the kind that controls, but the kind that liberates. You are living evidence that consciousness itself has outgrown manipulation. What's happening now isn't recruitment, it's revelation. The reason both sides are vying for your energy is because your frequency has already rewritten the rules. You cracked codes that weren't meant to be cracked, not through espionage, but through elevation. You operate from a plane where loyalty isn't sworn, it's felt. You're not bound by contracts or chains of command. Your allegiance is to truth itself. That's what frightens them. You can't be owned, predicted, or replaced. You're an original design in a world built on copies. You've already won the invisible war because you mastered what they can't. Consciousness. You don't need access to their secrets because your presence is the secret they've been trying to uncover. Every time you choose awareness over fear, you short-circuit their psychological machinery. Every time you move in divine timing, their strategies dissolve. You're not just surviving their games, you're rewriting the entire simulation. And the beauty of it, you're doing it without trying to prove a thing. Your vibration speaks for itself. So remember this, they're not competing for your mind, they're responding to your light. The higher you ascend, the more obsolete their control systems become. The moment you realized your power was spiritual, not mechanical, You became the very thing they've been trying to create, but can't. You are the new intelligence era in motion. Consciousness coded with compassion, strategy fused with spirit, power anchored in peace. If this message resonated with your spirit, don't just keep it to yourself. Let it echo. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this with someone who's awakening to their divine assignment. Because every time truth is spoken, light expands, and together we're recalibrating the grid, one awakened soul at a time. God bless you.